On behalf of GLFx Cape Town, I would like to welcome everyone to this session entitled From Landscape to Table, Food Systems and Perspective. I'm joined today in conversation with Nicola Rule. Nicola has an enduring curiosity about how people shape cities and landscapes through their everyday lives and the kind of knowledge they have as a result. Nicola currently works on urban sustainability at ICLEI Africa with a focus on climate change and urban food systems. She holds a master's in environmental change and management from Oxford University, and in her master's research, she asked how immigration and culture exchange affect both people's dietary choices and the sustainability of the food system. She has explored the science behind the environmental impacts of the food system, as well as questions about why people eat what they eat and how diets change. Welcome, Nicola.
Thanks, Emma. It's good to be with you.
The overarching question for the session is, how can we implement innovative food systems that positively impact the environment whilst also benefiting local communities? Earlier this year, the GLFx Cape Town speaker stage at Greenpop's Reforest Fest posed this question to a series of speakers, inviting them to discuss the topic of landscapes and food systems in a series of talks. These speakers included Mercy Ndeka of Viva Con Aqua, Casper Parr from the Oceaneers, Tasneem Karadia of Mzansi Meat, and Gray Maguire from the Climate Neutral Group. Today, we'll be presenting some of the clips from these series, discussing the complex dynamics of food and equity and the potential for shaping the future of food systems in South Africa. So Nicola, you helped curate and moderate the 4 speakers in this series. How was the experience of bringing together these diverse perspectives and speakers?
Thanks, Emma. I really enjoyed the experience. I think the great thing about being able to have conversations with several people over the course of a short space of time is that it brings out some of the complexity of issues around diets and food systems, which I think is really important, that we hold that complexity when we have these conversations, that we don't think that there's one solution that kind of fits all situations and all people, but that we take into consideration all the diverse work that's going on and the diverse perspectives on different ways to improve our food systems.
Yeah, exactly. And that links quite closely actually to the first set of clips that I'm going to show, which is all around how we as consumers are making those food choices, as well as the personal ethics and complexities around that, particularly in South Africa, where there is such a diversity of access and privilege and information.
If we are to talk about food production and food equity, food security, we have to look into people's livelihoods, for example, in the villages. We don't just want to talk about, access to food in the city set up where we can become vegan, vegetarian, but as Carl said, it is not very sustainable if it can't reach a normal person. It's a certain class of people who we are talking about. But what does it look like in a village, right? So we're coming from a history of food production.
And the way we want to do that is really through community building. We want to raise awareness, we want to inspire reduction, and we want to share this sense of empowerment that I feel, and I know my colleagues feel it, because with food choices, 3 times a day I have a choice. And I don't only just vote, I also vote with my money. It's quite amazing. I always call it, it's like democracy on steroids, you know? Like 3 times a day, I get to vote. And so often it's a choice between, you know, these industries, like large-scale fisheries or large-scale livestock farming operations, or often kind of local, smaller operations.
I think of the companies that I was talking about, we're the first in Africa to do it. And we're an overlooked market. People think that this doesn't exist here. People think that industrial agricultural farming doesn't exist here, but it does. And I think it's really important for us to be able to do it here. People want it. We've done some surveys that suggest that 52% of South Africans on a representative sample would eat cultivated meat if it was readily available, even at a higher price point. And I think it's about getting this to market to really provide options for people who otherwise wouldn't have it. In terms of Mzansi, we are working on beef. The main reason we started doing that was a few reasons. We want to be a South African company, an African company, and that means looking at food, how it's cultural, dealing with issues like food security. And starting with beef was really important for us because it was something that we could most people could relate to. We're going to start with products like burgers and sausages that can go in a braai and shish and yama, and products that will resonate with the average person. And thereafter, we will look at other species as well as other products that we will want to take to the average African market. There's a huge protein gap that we also want to work on, and once we're able to scale and get the cost down, we really want to tackle that as a South African and African company. It's very, very important to us.
In that, Casper spoke about voting with your wallet 3 times a day, and Tasneem and Mercy also highlighted systems of inequity that may make that voting more difficult for different people. And I suppose, what do you think, what are the questions do you think we as consumers should be asking ourselves and others about food choices that remain sensitive to those kinds of disparities?
Well, I think when you look at literature that's gone into questions of why we eat, what drives dietary change, what drives food decisions, it's complex. It's not necessarily a completely rational decision about environmental choices or health choices. Often it's kind of affective associations with childhood foods or cultural associations. And so I think Casper's right. We have a lot of agency when it comes to our diets and our food systems, especially if we can afford to make choices. But it comes with the kind of complexity of where we're coming from. I think it can also be overwhelming to try and, when we kind of contemplate all the possible impacts that our foods and food systems are having. And so I think if people are considering thinking about how they can use their diets as a way to express some kind of values, or it's important to start with one thing at a time, to start with manageable, to think about buying one thing that's locally made, or choosing to eat less of one thing, rather than, some people are able to kind of go vegan overnight and make that sustainable, but I think most of us, one at a time is a good way to go. And then also just deciding, like, what do you think is important to you? And I don't think there's one answer to that question. So for some people, it'll be buying local, supporting local businesses, or growing their own herbs. Or for someone else, it might be around packaging and buying something that involves less plastic or less packaging. Or it might be about eating something differently, making something with a different ingredient, eating less meat. So I think there's many ways to go about it, and all of them are, I think, justifiable. It's just about deciding what is important to you, and what change you think you can make within your means, and the availability of food around you.
Yes, that brings me to an anecdote that Casper shared during his speech, which was all about how where we're placing the spotlight on producers and on suppliers, and the kind of access that we have to local suppliers, but then the kind of double-edged sword that may form.
Like when we're in Muizenberg, so we're based in Muizenberg at the moment, we have the local track fishermen. And maybe that's a good story to finish. The other day we saw lots of sharks in the nets, like about 10, 12 bronze whaler sharks caught in the nets, and one ray. And I went down there and I filmed it, and they made a huge effort to release all the sharks. And nevertheless, it was hard to see these sharks in those nets. And subsequently we put that on Instagram, and I tried to comment it as neutrally as I could, but one community member still said, Casper, like, be careful, the way you're portraying that, you can easily take on a story as, oh, look at the track fishermen, the bad guys, they're like taking out the sharks. And subsequently it led us on a journey where this community member then invited us to come to the Simonstown Museum and learn about the history of displacement in South Africa, specifically about Simonstown. Our livelihoods were taken away from it. And what I learned from that is, we have to be super careful where we put our spotlight. Just because I can flip out the camera and run to Muizenberg Beach and put that on social media, that creates a spotlight on local track fishermen, traditional fishing. But because I can't just like grab a helicopter and fly out to the big fleets and show what they're doing with the sharks out there, I need to be careful where I put my spotlight.
So then the next set of excerpts is all instances of various innovative strategies for including equity into these food systems at the production stage. And in terms of not necessarily just about the choices we're making as consumers, but also where producers are able to make those interjections and those entry points at these food systems in order to make that meaningful change.
On that, and we need to be able to channel a lot more value to people who are being progressive within the agricultural space, because like I said, on the one hand we've got to be able to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are getting produced from agriculture, forestry and other land use, but on the other side of things is that we also need to be able to ensure that those systems themselves are increasingly more resilient as we move into the future. That what happens is that we channel the bulk of the money that comes from the sale and the generation of these credits back through to the farmers themselves to help reimburse them for the investments that they've made in terms of becoming regenerative, and also to incentivize other farmers to start becoming that way and to pick it up and move it not only into the whole of South Africa, but now we're starting to expand into the rest of sub-Saharan Africa as well. And we started the program initially last year. We piloted it with the dairy sector because it's got one of the worst footprints out of all of the agricultural value chains. But we've completed the pilot. We're going into a second phase now. Between May and September, the farmers will be able to sign into the program. And then at the tail end of this year, we'll move into a third process, which is going to be specifically geared towards working with small-scale farmers. We're actually probably going to start that in Swaziland initially because one of our key partners is there. And then we have a similar project that's going to get launched in Malawi as well. And then over time, we're wanting to integrate it into South Africa as well, because I wrote my master's thesis on that stuff, and it was also specific to very much working in the subsistence farming environment in the Eastern Cape. So really for me, like, the long-term goal is to be able to really bring it home and sort of see that big closed loop story busy finishing itself off.
So when I was talking and thinking about what ways can we use to rehabilitate, to plant trees, to reforest spaces in the villages, it is the use of agroforestry, which is planting of food trees, like fruit trees, nut trees, and then in between you plant crops that people can eat in between while they're waiting for the trees. And also at the same time incentivizing planting of trees. For example, if a family plants 10 trees, you can incentivize at the end, say, okay, how many trees have survived out of the 10? And out of the 10, you pay people for what survived. It's not really like a lot of money, but it's to encourage them to know that this is money to them, because you're talking about spaces where money is the problem. It's people who don't have access. So if you're incentivizing them, they'll take care of the tree better. It's a win for you because, okay, we have those trees, it's rehabilitated, the villages are getting better. And you can use fruit trees because people take care of food crops in general in the villages. So if you're planting fruit trees, they'll take care of them because it's food at the end of the day. So you're incentivizing, and they are growing food in the next few years, and then you can slide out of incentives and go to the next village like that. So they are growing food and you're capacitating them, It's not totally taking them out of poverty per se, but at least you've tried your best, and you're working with the beliefs, with the habits, with the culture, and ensuring rehabilitation.
So obviously financing these kinds of schemes and interventions is critical. And Mercy and Gray outlined a couple of options, the one being payment for ecosystem services, the other one being using mechanisms like market mechanisms like carbon credits. I suppose my question to you is, where do you think the onus should or needs to be for that financing? Does it need to be consumer-led demand on producers, or communities having expectations for restoration projects, for example? Or do you think it's the kind of responsibility of public and private financing markets, etc., to be driving that change in a big way?
I mean, my initial answer would be all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
The more the merrier, right? But I think the most sustainable and probably resilient initiatives are always going to be the ones that come from the communities driving the production systems, because they have to live in it. As I think Mercy's, what she was talking about is quite illustrative of that. Like if it's communities planting trees in rural areas, they live, they benefit from what those trees do for the soil, for the water, as well as the food systems. Whereas there's always going to be kind of limitations to someone coming in from externally and driving an agenda in an area where the communities haven't necessarily bought in, and there's always risks associated with that. So I mean, I think the best thing we can do is to support community-led initiatives, and to kind of do the homework in terms of ensuring that whatever changes to the food system are happening are supported by the community and actually beneficial to them. But yeah, I mean, I think there is merit to driving it on across all of those points. Of course, we see change in urban food systems driven by consumers for certain kinds of goods, and we see, obviously we need to get financiers, public and private financiers, on board. It's just really important that though they aren't necessarily driving their own agendas that are at odds with what local people need. And I think just also to point out, I work a lot on urban food systems, and in some ways that's a little bit more complex because of the distance often between the production systems and where it's being consumed. And then there's all kinds of other issues that come into urban food security in terms of accessibility and spatial planning in cities and that kind of thing. And so there's also, increasingly as populations grow in cities, a need for thinking through how cities work and how food flows through cities, and then what the limitations are in making healthy food accessible, especially to poor people in cities. And so it's not only the production and consumption, but there's also all the processes in between that become really important in longer food chains.
Yes, certainly. Well put. Before we close out, are there any final thoughts or reflections you'd like to add?
I guess just to say thank you to GLF Africa for kind of holding this space and holding all the nuances of this kind of conversation. I think it's really important to have this as a conversation rather than just this is the solution, go and implement it. And it's an exciting space. I mean, we saw with those 4 speakers all the innovations that they are driving, and that's just a very small subset of what's going on. So yeah, I think it's an overwhelming space sometimes, but also a really exciting one.
Certainly, and I'm looking forward to the other sessions in the GLF Africa conference to be able to see what else people are bringing up. There's a particularly interesting session on land rights, which I'm quite keen for.
Cool.
Nice. Thank you again for joining us, Nicola. A reminder for everyone watching that the full videos of all these speeches can be found on the GLFx Cape Town YouTube page, as well as extended blogs on each of the speeches are also available on the GLFx Cape Town chapter page, as well as on our LinkedIn. You can check out the chat box or the description for those links. And finally, we'll close with some poetry from the speaker stage, from poet, climate change project developer, and video creator Rosie McLean, entitled "You Can Find Me in Nature."
So I wrote this way back when I was still in high school. As a teenager, I started studying environmental science and just triggered an absolute love affair. And it was recently revived because my friend was going through a really difficult time and he needed something to provide comfort. And so this poem took on a whole new life, which was amazing. It was such an honor. And I think the poem is also really fitting to end off with because it's the theme of what we're engaging with this weekend, our connection to nature. so you can find me in nature. When I meet the unknown existence that everyone longs to understand, I'll raise my hands and praise this land where hidden memories lie. I'll smile at fate while I wait to see what's been patient all my life. I give myself not to an intangible man who many wish to meet, but to another, to a mother who has made my life so sweet. For no one knows what passion flows through my veins for this mother's gifts. Such heart-clenching and soul-drenching love comes through her kiss. I will dissolve into the mountains, the fiery skies, charismatic rocks. The trees will sneeze and shower you with leaves that hold my love. If you should need me, just believe me. I'll be all around. And if you can't see me, then look more clearly. I'll be screaming to be found. I give myself to Mother Nature as she gives her thrill to me, and as I join the joyful birds, I leave in ecstasy.